That is working. So, hi guys. Just a quick video today because, well, it's Christmas and New Year's coming up. I'm in a rush to see the rest of the family, and I'll let you down the last couple of days because the new esports season is around the corner, and roster decisions have to be made, contracts have to be made. There is a lot of stuff going on, so not much time for driving on my end, but did want to end the year with such a long break. So I just went through the comments quickly. There's always some kind of interest in, say, um, people just seeing the way I approach setting up the car. And as you know, I wouldn't say it's straightforward really. There's a lot going on. Sometimes you just try to feel the car and you make a certain change that you know from experience that works or not. So I haven't done anything now, so you'll be live in it. And some people were asking for the Porsche because it's particularly difficult to drive, and the Nürburgring is a rather technical track. So I think this is a good fit for both of these cars. Um, let's get a couple things straight. We chose the practice mode. We use 15 o'clock just for comparison because temperature is changed with the angle of the sun. And then we go to the track condition. We just use the clear preset, use optimum grip level, leave everything unchanged. So now we have a setting that we compare lap times in. I'll have Motec running in the background. I'll upload the file, of course, upload the replay file as well, potentially. Let's see how big that one is. And the setup that I come up with in the next couple of minutes. So let's load the track. Thankfully, loading times in Assetto Corsa are always rather short. And of course, we're driving the new patch because what else? And now we have some more detail in the physics in general. One of which being car rigidity now being modeled. So I haven't run the Porsche before. I noticed that the Lambo, for example, uh, that's how I feel it. I felt the rear to be a lot stiffer now. Maybe that's because of the engine in the back adds a lot of rigidity to the back of the car. So I had to make the springs softer on the 2019 Evo Lamborghini for it to behave the same as it did before the new patch. So I expect some changes on the car necessary on the Porsche as well. I know I did a setup earlier for the 39-degree track tramp, which you can see here. And I always, because this is the major thing I change about the setup from different temperatures, is the tire pressures. So I save a set for each temperature that I've been driving in to save some work when I come across different temperatures. Let's take a look. Electronics look low. Telemetry is on max. ECU map, important one in the Porsche. The fastest one is number 8. But they just took that from the real car, so no offense to Assetto Corsa here. Let's take a little more fuel. I don't know, let's go. What do you want me to do for it to be comparable? 50? Is 50 alright? Let's do that. It's important in the Porsche because the fuel tank is in the front, so the car balance changes a lot with the fuel level. Don't think I've done much to the setup. Yep, yeah, clearly haven't. So there's something to come. Can we have that? Yeah, you will see the balance down here without the fuel. And once we add fuel, the aerodynamic balance of the car changes because if the fuel tank is in the front, the weight goes on the front tires and lowers the front of the car, which results in more downforce being generated on the front of the car, which you can see with the front aero variation value right here going up the more fuel you put in. There you go. So at the start of a stint with a heavy Porsche, you will have a lot of oversteer, and as the car gets lighter, the front aero shift goes further to the back or less to the front, call it what you want, and the car will become more understeery throughout the stint. So you want to kind of incorporate that already when setting up the car, and so we've chosen 50 liters, so let's look how the aero balance look at that point. So 4.3%, this is something to keep in mind. Interesting. It's the same when there's no fuel in it. So okay, 50 liters of fuel kind of gives us that value. Now we have to check how the balance of the car feels before we do any changes. And of course you have to do a different setup if you do a longer race or if you do a shorter race, because the weight balance and the aero balance of the car will be different. I always use, where's the brake pads? One, yeah, one being like the most, I don't know, with the biggest brake force and the highest wear of the normal pads. We won't use pad number 4 as they're only for experimental reasons and there's no point using them. We're not going to do anything particular over 1 or 2 hours. These brake pads easily take that, can last that time, and only if we do, I don't know, very long races above 3, 6 hours, 12, maybe 24, we would go for different brake pads. In terms of pressure, we just have to see how that pans out now. And did I do any changes? Not really. Gonna save it anyway and go to the track right now. Yes, to the track right now. Right now.
Right, here we go.
Let's first check that the steering wheel is actually in sync. That looks very much like it. So first things first, for me this is always tire pressures and how they evolve throughout a lap or two. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm not really looking at lap time, I'm trying to feel the car a bit. Can't attack too much with the pressures that low. Car turns in quite a lot once I lift the throttle. And understeers a bit once I hit the throttle, but this is down to the construction of the Porsche in general. With the engine in the back, gives a totally different feeling than all other cars, really. So what can we see? Tires are going up in temperature, brakes are going up in temperature, the rears not becoming too hot in terms of brakes. That's a bit of a weird one. The third gear feels a bit short, the second a bit, vice versa. The second gear feels a bit short for that downhill turn, while the third seems a bit too long. Sixth gear also rather long. So the pressure isn't really building yet, so it needs at least one more lap to see where they are going. They might not get there at all, we'll see. On the other end, I'm not really attacking at all. So maybe I push the car a little more now. What line? So seems that something has definitely changed in the physics again between the patches, because I would say the pressures of the tires won't come up as high as they were in the last patch. So maybe there's been some logic change in how the pressure is chosen in the setup. I don't know. I only know I have to adjust them because this looks a bit too few. Again, we're aiming for those 28 psi, and now we all around, basically the rears are way underinflated. That was a better one. So the third gear might just work. Have to keep a higher apex speed in that corner for that. Okay, but I think it's time to go back to the pits because the tires don't seem to go anywhere already. Just completing the lap, and then this is the first small test done. So let's go to the pits, and now we should see the same values on the tires all over again. And then we can pretty much see how many clicks we have left to the 28 psi. So on the front tire, this is about 7 clicks. Let's do 6, because, you know, might get a little more if I push more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same, the front right, it went a bit higher. I will just do 5 clicks on this one, because even though it shows 27.3 here, I know it was 27.5 during the lap already. So let's just add 5 here. The rear is almost missing a whole PSI, so maybe just in case I drive faster, more aggressively, I generate more temperature. So I would just go by 8 clicks here, up to 25.9 here, should result in 27.9 there. And this is even worse, so let's go for 10, 11 clicks right here to use the whole surface of the contact patch, right? Else we just use more the borders of the tire with the tire wall, but not actually the middle of the tire where the air inflates the tire and presses it down on the ground. For now, shouldn't do any other changes, because then all the temperatures change again, the pressures change again, so there's a lot of evolvement being done. This is something we don't really have to touch. We stay with the 50 liters here. Do we actually get new brake discs if we go out again? It looks like it, does it? That's weird. Tire set 3, so we can't take new tire sets, but can we also take new brake sets? Not sure. Okay, so this is something to investigate. If that just keeps going down, we at some point just need a new car, because I can't change the brake discs. I won't do anything to all those because this really changes the car a lot, and I haven't been really driving it on the limit. So now, for now, just pressures, and then we go from there, I'd say. Indeed. Let's see where we end up. Right now we're driving in pretty much one of the warmest weathers you can have in the whole game, or at least one of the warmest track temperatures. So we might have rather hot tire temps in general, which could become a problem, and if it actually does, then we can take some countermeasures. For example, using a bit less camber, using different roll bars to allow more weight transfer to the inside tire, for example, so the load on the outside tire isn't as much and doesn't heat up as much, for example. With more pressure, feels better right away out of the box. Way more grip. Way more surface of the contact patch of the tire is used, and you can already feel that going through the corners. The car just turns more nicely, you can hit the throttle harder, the grip will be there. Way more confidence in the car already, just by changing tire pressures. And yeah, I was talking about when the tires get too hot, then we could, for example, increase the brake ducts to allow a little more cooling of the brakes, which overall makes the whole tire and rim a little cooler and might just help us with a couple degrees on the surface of the tire. Oops, that's a nasty one. And I can see that when you go through there, I don't know, 30-40 times or so, you will at one point end up hitting those curbs in the chicane very hard, and you want the suspension to be able to mitigate that and give you some confidence in that corner, else you will be too careful and lose a lot of time. The brakes are insane. I can brake way later, I have a feeling. The ABS kicking in that one right away. So my first impressions of the changes might be the brakes seem to operate way more aggressive and reduce braking distance actually compared to before the patch. Which, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that could lead to shorter braking distances and faster lap times in the end. We'll need to reconfirm. Let's take a look at the pressures. That looks way more balanced now and way more into the zone where we want to have them. Maybe already a bit too much on the front right one, as we only did 2 laps by now. The car's fairly stable. The balance is alright. You will have to adjust the line compared to all other cars. The Porsche generally likes a later apex because it understeers a lot once you hit the throttle. So you have to have the car more straightened once you exit the corner. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 more clicks on the right rear tire or so, but overall I'd say the pressures look fine now. Let's try how late we can brake. Oh, even the 100-meter board is already a conservative one. So could even brake at under 100 meters, which I'm pretty sure didn't work before the patch. Oh yeah, unlucky. Rotates very nicely. I wouldn't do much changes to the setup now, it feels alright. You can drive the car very comfortably. And all it really needed was some adjustment of the pressures to the weather that we're driving in. That's a little oversteer, but that's not much. It's a race car. You want it to. The only thing really that bothers me is how much the balance will actually change once the fuel goes down. That was a bad corner. I don't remember what times I did before the patch. Did we tap into the 54s? I know there was a video of that car in that track, so I will look it up. I'm pretty sure we can do a 54 with the settings that we have right now. And we might even drive a little heavier than we did in the other scenario. So there's already the 50. Wow, come on. This is a 54. Pressure is on the left side, maybe a little too high. Oh yeah, that braking distance was way better. Already gained a couple tenths right there. A bit hot in here. And we can use a lot of the inside curb here, even go further than the red one. So now I'm making this mistake again. And that was a bit too aggressive. So maybe, yeah, there could be a moment where the car oversteers a little too much, using a double apex here to again straighten the car a little for the exit, which the Porsche particularly likes. I think I can go way faster if I feel more confident with the car. Little lock up there, not a good one. Little hot in here as well. What a drift. So now the temperature's built a little on the rear, and I'd say once I push, I need a little less pressure. Very stable in the second half of the chicane. So the entry into the left one is always a bit of a... Actually, don't know what I want to call it. So yeah, pressure a little too high on the rear now, and especially the left side. So let's make a small correction there. Let's push the lap time a little more. We maybe want to do changes to the dampers, but there aren't really a lot of say bumps on the track that you want the suspension to take away, and I wouldn't really look at Motec by now because there isn't like something utterly wrong with the car or so, or some major thing happening in some corner where you have to take a look what the suspension does or so. Generally, I'd say because we do use curbs here, we want the fast bump thing to allow a little more movement to not unsettle the whole chassis of the car when going over a heavy bump, especially in the chicane. So what I would do is just reduce a couple clicks here to make that part of the car a little softer. Wouldn't touch the well, slow bumps and dampers. I do just, that is just by feeling right now really. I could take a look at the Motec data, but I'm far away from the point where I want to go into those detailed optimizations. We don't have a long straight, but I also don't feel we need more rear wing right now, so I won't touch that. We could use more brake ducts, but the temperatures weren't that bad either. And it takes a bit of straight line speed from us, so I don't really want that as well. I don't think we were bottoming out on the front, even though the car is on its lowest. That could change if we use 100 liters in the fuel tank, for example. But that is a lot of testing still to come. For now, I just wanted the pressures adjusted a bit. I did that. So maybe we can now attack the car for longer without the pressure going too high. So is that new brake pads now? I always forget the value because it's not a like a 0.00 but point something where it starts. Let's focus on the 28 dead for next time round. Don't really feel any changes to the suspension needed right now because I don't feel anything really wrong with the car. It's not, wouldn't say it's too hard, wouldn't say it's too soft. The aggressive setup coming with the car already from ACC is quite good. There's no major thing right now, so that would need for now a lot more laps to see where issues actually lie, and once I really drive the car comfortably, there will be more that we can see in terms of changes. So let's just do a couple more laps. So on the inside here you can use all that. Maybe we don't need to go up to 5th there, because the car revs so high. Let's see how high actually. Oh, quite a bit more. And now I would also have to do some testing on Monza or so to see where I actually have to shift up and where, in which RPM range, in which gear the engine still accelerates me. the most. Yeah, let's get the tires up to temperature, or rather get them to build the pressure. Yeah, I start to get an idea. Maybe we actually want a little less oversteer in the car, because I feel I'm not attacking as much as I might be able to, because I don't have the thrust in the rear of the car not stepping out on turn entry. So with more confidence in the rear, I would attack the corners more on entry and throw the car in a bit faster. Right now I'm being a bit too cautious there, and too bad as well. Oh boy. Maybe driving a little iRacing helped with my braking. I also haven't told you, I have the Fanatec B3s, but I recently added the damper kit and the brake performance kit, which is just a different resistance in the pedal. And for me it's now way easier to keep the brake stable at a certain point and release the brake even more easier, and the whole brake application should be a little more smoother now. So, okay, now the tires should be in the window. So, oh, there's the 54 already, and I haven't really done a good lap. So let me attack once more. Was rather careful. My PC has a bit of performance issues at the moment. That feels some lags. Sorry for that one. I was talking to have less oversteer, now I want more. I think there's so much lap time in the car. There you go. That's even quite something. Yeah, there was something in the middle of the turn where the car started. I don't know if it bottomed out, but it stopped turning. Let's try one more time to confirm that maybe. I'm pretty sure we can brake later now with the new brake pads. Like the initial bite of the brakes is really a lot. That's a better exit, but I don't gain time. That's a bit of a difficulty in the Porsche, because you accelerate so early, you don't really see the exit yet. That's the first time the traction control kicked in, really. That's how much grip the car has on the rear. I think you could almost drive it without the traction control, really. That's a tricky one. That was a nasty bump, but the car ate it well. So maybe change of dampers already paid off there. Now that's the first decent lap time, I think. And we're almost, well, it's a bit far, but I think we can even do in this weather a 53, which I think is quite quick. Bit oversteering. Too hesitant, too far inside. It's difficult to drive, but once you get the hang of it, it gets really fast. Oh boy. That was bad timing on the entry. Oops, that green one is dirty. Okay, so there's a couple things I do see now. I think the entry is a bit too aggressive on the car. And I think the exit is a little too understeery in medium speed corners. In low speed corners, the traction on the rear could be more, which sounds already like an unsolvable puzzle. So the first thing, pretty much, let's look at the temperature gap. So we're not really running high camber yet, because the temperature difference from inside to outside of the tire isn't really high. It's not even 10 degree. So we could surely run more camber. Let's do that then. Oops, wrong direction. So we do this all around the car. I don't actually want it to be that much. Yeah, I want it to be the same on the rear. Then let's do little changes one by one. Let's go to this area. Well, generally, I do like how the car's balance is, but I kind of don't like the reaction on the throttle, so there could be something pointing to the differential. And I want probably a little more rotation on corner exit, especially in that downhill right-hander. So I'll open the diff a little more, allowing the rear wheels to turn more independently of one another. Not touching the roll bars yet. Maybe I do though, and just do the rear roll bar a little less hard to make the rear less aggressive in general. That works all throughout the turn, entry, mid-corner and exit. It affects everything. And then we can certainly do something here. The rebound on the front is already quite, yeah, quite low. Just by looking at the numbers doesn't mean anything because you don't know how the damper actually works and what each click really means. But let's try even some more maybe. And the bump on the rear could allow for more rotation, so we want to make that harder just as a try. Then this is pretty, like the rebound could be softer as well because this is the entry of the corner when the rear lifts up on the braking, so we want to allow a little more movement there before the rear wheels lose touch to the ground. And maybe I want the rear to be planted a little more so I can attack a little more, so we could lower the rear and see how the aero balance of the car changes. And actually, it just gets worse from here, then it becomes better again. So that's an interesting one. Because say you're coming from, the rear is very high, so the front right now generates more downforce. Then as you go down, you see the value down here moving towards the back down to 4.4, and then it starts increasing again because there's something in the aerodynamic of the car that is weird and we can't entirely understand. So I have to lower the car a lot actually to get more aero balance to the rear, and now just from 63, 64 millimeters downwards the rear starts generating more downforce again. So this is what I'm going to try. Right now we came from, where did we came from? Sorry, I forgot. We came from, let's deploy the fuel as well. 4.4%, and now we're going, is even more to the front now. Now it starts moving to the back again. So let's go for just that slight change, 62 millimeters where it shifts between. There seems to be some point where the aerodynamic changes quite a lot from rather stable in all this area from 50 millimeters down to 63. It's pretty much the same, and then all of a sudden it drops down to 4.2 once we go to 61 millimeters. Interesting, something to investigate further. Just gets more work right here. So let's try that 61 millimeters and see how stable the car becomes. We have to think, saying this is the front of the car, this is the rear, we have a little rake in the car, right? So lowering the rear, we did something like this, moving the car more into, well, same level front and rear. But this also, think there's the wing, this is still the rear, this is the wing on top now. And with the rake angle, the angle of the rear wing changes too, right? So if we lower the rake and lower the rear wing also have a smaller, just slightly smaller angle. So the downforce we generate with the floor of the car kind of has a trade-off with the angle of the rear wing, right? And this has way more effect. See, this is like a whole percent right away. And if we stay at the 70, it would still be 0.8% or so. So let's just use the rear ride height right now to adjust for aerodynamic balance. As we've shortened the suspension by a millimeter right now, or the travel that we allow, we could think about making the dampers overall harder, but only if we exceed what the dampers can take and the car starts to unsettle on the rear. Then we would have to use a little harder dampers, maybe even harder springs to stop the car from running into the bump stop, which is on the rear on its maximum by default. So just a couple of tiny changes we did right now. We just a few clicks on the dampers, a few clicks on the aerodynamics to move the aero balance backwards, make the rear more stable. We also adjusted pressures once more, and we changed the differential a little to allow for the rear tires to turn a bit more independently of one another. We decreased the rear roll bar because I expect this to settle the rear a little more, so I will save this here. Yeah, just save it here. I think this is alright. Yes, nice. And let's drive again and see what this results in. Oh, by the way, just one more thing. I wanted to check my clicking is really good. I just wanted to see how the brakes changed. Okay, so now obviously I have new brake discs starting at 29 millimeters of pad thickness and 32 millimeters of disc thickness. The term wear is a bit misleading here. It works the same as the tread of the tire work. So it's not showing wear, it's what's showing left, right? If that makes sense to you. So yeah, don't read that word, just use pad thickness, tire tread thickness, and disc thickness, because all these values decrease, and if you actually show wear, it should start from 0 and go up, right? So anyway, we got new tires, new brakes, and some setup changes that we want to try right now. We take a look at the clock right now. Alright, we have a couple more minutes that we can do, so let's just do this run. With the telemetry is on. That's a bit more understeery, but I might be judging too early. When the car is actually more understeery now, in some situations, that could result in the front tires making more work when turning the car, which of course will lead to them getting warmer, developing more pressure inside the tire, so we might have to adjust the tire pressures once more in the end. It's quite a lot more on the steering already, I can feel that. So even though we just did one click here and there, the car behaves quite differently right now. Like the turn in is almost shit. And also the aero balance seems to have a bigger impact than I thought. It's really understeery through here now. So just a couple clicks. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but a couple clicks can also destroy the setup, right? So let's try 2-3 more laps to get to a verdict. That was a bit far and late. The behavior of a car really has changed. I'm not entirely convinced. I need to relearn what I do here in terms of driving. There's some rotation on the throttle, I like that. Ah, that is too understeery there. Definitely. No way, no. So didn't expect these changes to impact the whole car so much. I'm unsure if it's down to. So let's just change one value at a time now. So let's put the roll bar back up at the rear for now. And if that doesn't solve the issues, I'll take the aero Oh, did that change? No. See, that changed a little more than it did before. This is where it came from. It didn't change so much. Why does it always deactivate itself? That's weird. Why is that? So we're coming from 4.2. And we went to 4.2. I'm a bit confused, I have to say. This is not treating me nicely, this whole graphic. So we had 4.2% apparently before. Then we changed something. And we would have more downforce to the front right here. And if we lower it even further, it would be back to where we started. So there shouldn't be a big impact of the aero. That's an interesting one right here. That would shift it even further forward, which we don't want. What happens below that? Let's go for the 50 elite. That's a bit weird, really, have to say. So this should give us even more understand now. What's the lowest we can have here? Oh, that's a lot of change down there. See, every click does a lot of changes now. Interesting, very interesting. So it does make it understeery there, but I don't quite get what's happening between the 70 millimeters and 60, 62 or so. There's some weird stuff going on in the car that I probably can't do in a video just because it takes too long to find out about it. This is puzzling to say the least. Okay, let's just try again with a roll bar change, how the car behaves. So yeah, but this is how setup work goes. You discover something, and then you will have to go deeper in that one to understand really what's happening there. That would potentially involve me going to the forums and have a discussion with some people. And on the GT3 car, aerodynamics is really sensitive and really important. I'm really treating this almost like on a Formula 1 car, where every millimeter or even less does a lot of change to the car. That's understeery there still, but the tires on the front is also still not up to the pressure they should be in, so it's hard to already evaluate from just that. Have to heat them up a bit more. Maybe I try to use third all over the section maybe. What I'd have to do now is see in Motec data how much the rear of the car lifts up under braking, for me then to see how much the aero balance changes under braking and how much downforce the rear actually has when I turn into the corner. Because I feel this is where the major change just comes from now. I feel it's just a lot more understeery than before. And I just did a tiny bit of change. Of course, lowering the rear also increases the rear camber, but not sure it's that much. Maybe this though. Let me do that final change. This car is difficult to set up, I can tell you. This is gonna last a while until we have a working solution. And temperature difference still isn't high, really. But let's still try less camber compared to the front, because we don't see live values of camber, right? Now we have the different brake pads. I don't know, do we get new brake pads now? I simply don't know. I'm changing the camber because I don't feel I have a lot of rotation in the car right now, and this might be because we lowered the rear, which also changes the camber values, of course. Unless Assetto Corsa changes the camber value. It's really down to the progress that Assetto Corsa Competizione does to the setups, right? Because there could be an automatic adjustment of the camber as I lower the car so that the value actually stays stable. And we do see live values when we set up the car. So much insecurity, so much to find out. And we have to think now, when we hit the throttle, the car squats down on the rear and goes even closer to the ground, and just might go into that area where there's so much downforce on the rear that we don't have any oversteer anymore, which can cause some more understeer, even though our intention was to make it a bit different. So understanding the car and aerodynamics on it will take the bigger part of the setup work, definitely. So let's see what we can do. This feels already a little bit better again. Didn't exactly nail that one. You can see how hesitant I am on the brakes, so on the throttle, because I kind of lost what the car does on the exit. Not happy. I call this not satisfying at all, but I'll stop here. I think there's potential in the car. I'm just starting to understand, and it would take me hours and days and potentially weeks to get behind all the details. And there's something certainly going up with the downforce on the rear, on the braking, on the accelerating, with being in a very tiny zone where the car works exactly as you want it to be because of how the car, or especially the rear, moves under braking, the rear moves under acceleration, then it gets closer to the ground, has more downforce, goes away from the ground, has a lot less downforce. So this seems to be very, very sensitive on the rear, and you actually want the car in a very tiny zone. So there will go a lot of testing into the rear aerodynamics on the Porsche before you can, to be honest, really before you can start playing with other values, because this is the most important bit. This changes the car completely from corner entry to mid-turn to exit. So yeah, this is pretty much the conclusion of the testing. That this is the area I will focus on, but it's probably going to take a lot more time, and I will only have that in the new year. So until then, I wish you happy Christmas. Have a nice New Year's evening. Play as much as you want, really, and I'm happy if you just take your time to try around with that yourself. Maybe you find something. Let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to apply it to the setup and see where we go. I'll upload the telemetry, upload the setup that I have right now, so you can play around with those changes that I made and feel the differences. I think they're quite severe, even though we just did 1 or 2 clicks in either direction. So, yep, that should be it for now. Thanks for joining me.